I hadn't, yeah, I had read earlier, but I haven't read recently.
Good. All right. Everybody, we're back in the tours to Eve Hay. Remember, we're dealing with the case. We've kind of moved ourselves to dealing with questions of vessels, of kalim, and how much they exude into our food. So go for Hay, please.
So that's V'im Yadua.
Yeah.
V'im Yadua Kama Hu Ha'isor Kagon Kaf Chadashas Nir Ba Kazayat Chala Vachar Kach B'yomo Nir Ba Kedera Shel Basar and Tzarich Ela Shishim Avatel HaKazayat Shabala.
Good. Explain that part.
So if you know how much was the Isor, if you know the volume of that or amount of that, you only need 3 batal shishim. It doesn't, I guess you're not really taking into account the volume of the spoon. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, right. If I bought a new spoon, I took it out of the package. We'll get into other discussions of what new may mean, but for the moment, let's take the easy case. I'm basing this on Darchei Moshe here, right? I bought a spoon. It's I bought it from a Jew, or I didn't, and I toiveled it, whatever I did, right? And I mix a tiny bit of hot milk with that spoon, right? And then I stick it in I only stuck it. I have an olive's worth of milk. I stir the olive's worth of milk, hot milk with a spoon. I take it out. And then that same day, I'm saying same day. Let's assume same day for the moment. It does say biyomo, right? I stir my meat soup with that same spoon. I only need to be mevatel, the kazait of milk that I mixed it with. And even though the spoon is a 10 zaitim spoon, right? It's a big spoon, right? I don't need to worry about the whole. So only because I know the only thing it ever could have absorbed was that 1 zait of milk, right? That's the only possibility. Okay, good. But aval.
Well, half is shanir ba kama pa'amim and yodian kama umasari makula. But if it's an old spoon that's been used to serve things multiple times, we don't know how much it has absorbed, and we have to measure against the whole volume of the spoon.
Great. Okay, we're going to get into this kaf yashana shenir bakama pamim. What is he talking about here? When did I stir it and all that? But that's the tour. All right, who's made this split for us? Okay, good. Any questions or clarifications before we jump into the Beit Yosef, and then we'll do the Darchei Moshe too, because these are very worth seeing. All right, Yavni, take the Beit Yosef on this on Hay here. Umashikatavim yadua kama. And you are muted, so I don't know if that makes if you're aware of that or not.
Thank you. Yeah, I was. ומה שכתב אם ידוע כמה הוא האיסור כגון כף חדשה שניער בה כזית חלב וכולי.
By the way, this is definitely a chalav basar case.
Chalav?
Yeah.
Okay. So, how do you know?
Because he says...
later on, look at the few first lines of the Prisha.
So
it says basar afterwards, so it's... Chala is chet lamed vet with comments.
Yeah, so it's the context, right? The tour says you then you put it in kedera shel basar, so it's clearly he's talking about a chalav basar case. So
I mean, anyway, chalav would also be
chalav and basar is also a problem. It's very true, but yes, but
okay. Why did I think it was chalav? I thought it was chalav because
we're in Tarovot. And so most of the time we're dealing with chalav. So
because it says im yadua kama hu ha'isur.
You're right. Yeah, it's a good point. But for the moment, let's say chalav, and we can deal with the particulars later. So.
גם זה מדברי הרשב"א בתורת הבית, וזה לשונו, היכא דניער בכף חדשה, כזית חלב, ואחר כך תחווה בבשר, אין צריך אלא 60 כחלב הנבלה בה, דהה ידעינן כמה הווה. Is that clear enough? Should I translate her?
I think it's pretty clear, unless anybody has a question. Keep going.
וכן הדין אם ניער כזית חלב בכף ישנה שאינה בת יום. So and it's same thing if it's not new, but it hasn't been used in the past. It hasn't been used in the past day.
Great. That's it, right? That was not explicit in the Torah, right? This is, but it is on the Rashba. All right.
אבל אם הייתה ישנה ובת יומה, יש לומר דחז"ל כל מה שבלוע בתוך הכף מבשר בחלב כחתיכת נבלה ובכולה משערינן. דבבאי דנפק מיניה לא ידינן. So, but if on the other hand, it is the case where it is both old, like has been used multiple times and has been used in the last 24 hours. So maybe this means that maybe this means that you have to have like each time that it was used previously, there was not a day that passed without it being used. In which case we could say like everything that got absorbed into it has been reactivated and because it's basar and chalav together, it's isur, and then and therefore like all of it could have come out, and because we don't know how much came out, we go according to its whole size.
Great.
Right. Yeah.
Just like to push on that, right? It's an old spoon. It's been used before, and it's also been used within that same day, according to the Rashba. That's the case where we're at. Now let's see what the Ramban has to say, though. So,
it's an old spoon, and it's been used in the last day, and there wasn't a day. Yeah, okay.
He hasn't said that yet, right?
Right. It's not totally clear. Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't been totally clear of what exactly is it. You know that even the pagum flavor is reactivated. It's not so clear, right? Here, he's. But keep going with the Ramban, and then we'll see the Darchei Moshe, and this may help us.
Well, except that he says, וכן הדין אם ניער כזית חלב בכף ישנה שאינה בת יומא. I assume that the וכן הדין אם ניער כזית חלב today, presumably בכף ישנה שאינה בת יומא, or?
Yeah, exactly. In other words, if I have let's say a spoon that I've used for milk for its entire life, but I let it sit for 24 hours, right? And then today I use it for some milk, and I use it for one zayit of milk, and then I put it in a meat pot. I only have to worry about that one zayit of milk.
So that means it can't be reactivating the pagum flavor.
Good. Yeah. But if I used it, sorry. Bekaf yeshana she'ena bat yoma. Yeah. I didn't use it today. That was my mistake. If I had an old spoon, I had sat for 24 hours, and then I used it in the pot. That's not a problem. But if I did use it today, and it's an old spoon, then it might be a problem.
And there wasn't a 24-hour gap.
Yeah.
Between
potentially. So it's
yes. Yeah.
Keep going and yeah.
אבל הרמב"ן ז"ל כתב, דמסתברא דלא אמרינן בבלוע חתיכה עצמה נעשית נבלה, דלא אמרינן בבלוע חתיכה עצמה נעשית נבלה, ואין משערינן בין בישנה בין בחדשה, אלא במאי דבלה לבד. עד כאן לשונו. So the Ramban said, I mean, the Rashba quotes the Ramban as saying that that maybe like the stuff that's been absorbed into it, we can't say that is going to become nevela, and that is going to become chanan, and therefore we don't actually have to worry about. Therefore, it doesn't matter if it's an old or a new spoon. If you have only now, if you can tell what just now got absorbed into it, then that's what you need to worry about.
Exactly. You need to only worry about today's absorption, right? Ever, according to the Ramban, right? You don't have to worry about the history of the spoon beyond today, right? As opposed to the Rashba in his previous comment seems to say, if you used it today, you also have to worry about its previous uses, right? And this is Rav Nachum looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to say something. Sorry, this is very confusing, and I wanted to say something. I want to clarify it. When we're talking about this old spoon, it's not old with milk and meat. Yeah, he doesn't have treif kelim in his house. No, it's an old meaty spoon, right?
Or other way.
It's an old meaty spoon. Let's agree on that it's an old meaty spoon. And then he dipped it into milk, a kazayat of milk. And then he says, oh, it's a meaty spoon. I'm going to use it for my meaty soup. And he used it for his meaty soup. So what we've got is a case of, let's say that the spoon has got 2 zaytim of meatiness to it, 1 zayit of milkiness to it. And now we've stirred my big pot. And the question is, do we measure against the milkiness of it, which is only 1 zayit? Or do we say, wait a second, this spoon has 2 zaytim of meatiness from today, right? From today. It's kaf yeshana shu ben yomo, which means that's what a kaf yeshana ben yomo means. It means that it's a meaty spoon that was used ben yomo, was used today. So now the question becomes a different question, which is, do we say that chanan, which is milk and meat, can they interact within the walls of that spoon? Because the meat going into the 2 zaytim of meat into my chicken soup is not a problem. The only way that those 2 zaytim of meat could be a problem is if they interacted with the 1 zayit of chalav, and then became this new entity called basar b'chalav, and that volume is now 2, or the whole size of the spoon, let's say 2 zaytim. So that's the question. So if you go back and you read it, he says, when it says, I'm just going back a little. Yesh lomar dechazar kol mashe bala betocha kaf mibasar. This is I have to read it. Mibasar b'chalav. Now with the new chalav that's happening now, not mibasar b'chalav. Mibasar with the new chalav that it's encountering, and now it's kachaticha nevela b'kulo misharina. Then we're going to measure against the whole thing because it's got a lot of milk, it got a lot of meat in it, and it could be the whole spoon. And then it's got at least a little bit of milk, so that's going to make the whole spoon. And then comes the Ramban and says, Lo amrinan bibalua chatichat. I said, oh, we don't say by the balua, by that meat that was in the spoon, that we're now interacting with milk. We don't say chatichat nase nevela. And all you measure against is the new milk. Ein misharin bein b'yeshana bein b'chadasha ela b'may debala from the milk. Levad. That's the way you have to read it. I mean, it's.
That's helpful. Thank you.
I think you made it more. I think you made it more complicated than it used to be, actually. Right.
But now it makes sense, though.
Yeah, but now it makes sense.
It does. But no, I think you right because it doesn't have to be that you used it. Let's say it's a meat spoon, or we can even say it's just a milk spoon, right? You used it that day for milk.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Not, I'm sort of going away from. It's not a milk spoon that's used for meat, because I mean you're right. You could say that, but then there's no question of chanan. Why is he talking about chanan belu? Why is he saying? Because then now we're talking about milk coming out of it into the meat, and that's not called chanan. We just have to tell the milk. Why is he talking about chanan? The whole reason he's talking about chanan is he's talking about the interaction in the spoon of meat,
of the milk and the meat, of the old meat,
with the new milk.
Yes. Okay. So I'm on the same page with you for that. That's
it's complicated. I say it's very complicated. Yeah,
could we please hear Sarah?
Thank you. You can't have the
takes a man to hear a woman.
Great, good. Why can't we have the chanans come in at the stage at which, I guess I was trying to imagine Joel's case where it's like a milchik spoon all the way, and then the question is just like the basar v'chalav occurs when you put the milchik spoon into the fleshik pot, and why can't that be the place at which you have the chanan problem? Does that make sense?
Because everybody would agree that that's chanan. That's for sure chanan. That's what I mean. That's just otherwise. That's
not chanan b'kelim. That's just chanan.
I would say that's just chanan because that's the flavor of the meat the milk coming out into the broth, and there's chanan occurring in the broth.
Well, I mean, for the soup, the question is whether or not. So you're asking about whether or not in the spoon the milk and meat and then come back
out. Exactly. That's what I'm asking.
Right. That seems nobody seems to hold that, right? That would be even a kaf chadasha right, that you use then for milk that day. I think, Sarah, this is the case you're bringing up. I used it to stir milk that day. It's a new spoon.
Yeah.
And then I put the spoon in meat, right? And then the meat milk interaction within the spoon makes the entire spoon.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no. But no one is, right. Okay, now I understand. Thank you.
No, because the Torah, right, the Torah says, right, if it's a kaf chadasha, right, if I used it to stir one zayit of milk.
He's not talking about the status of the spoon. He's talking about the status of the broth.
Yeah, he's talking about the broth, right? If I use, right? I mean, no, I'm not. What Sarah's saying is, I think you're saying, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Is that the spoon, as I'm stirring the meat soup with this spoon that I used for milk that day, that the meat milk interaction within the spoon itself now becomes chanan, and the entire spoon is exudes. Is that what you're saying, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I guess right, which seems like nobody actually holds that way. So maybe that like answers my question as to why that can't possibly be what's happening here, and it has to be this more complicated case where we start out with a flesh spoon, we stir the milk, and then we.
I don't know why you're saying nobody holds that way.
You disagree with me? Like it's. Or at least the Torah doesn't hold that way. I don't know about that.
The Torah can't hold that way because otherwise you would say that there would be no difference between a kaf yeshena and a kaf chadasha, right?
Yeah,
because you would have the same problem no matter what. If the problem occurs when you take the spoon and put it into the meat pot, then it doesn't matter whether it's new or old. You still have a problem. But obviously the Torah doesn't think that because he makes a distinction.
I think I understand what you're saying. You're saying, why don't we say, I think I understand your question. You're saying, why don't we say that there's a kazayit of milk, and then the meat goes into the spoon, and now the spoon is 2 zaytim, because the volume of the spoon is 2 zaytim. And now the meat goes into the spoon, makes the spoon aser, and then that becomes 2 zaytim of iser, and then we need to mavatel 2 zaytim against it. Since nobody says that, then nobody is holding Chanan B'Keli. I don't.
Well, not that nobody is holding Chanan
B'Keli,
but just that the Chanan. I'm not saying that nobody holds Chanan B'Kelim ever. I'm just saying that in this example, to the extent that there's a problem of Chanan B'Kelim, it can't be occurring at the moment when you put the spoon that you've just stirred the milk into the pot. It must be occurring at an earlier stage, which helps me understand why your explanation was correct. All of this is to say you were right and I was wrong.
Yeah, but I still disagree a little bit with what you're saying there, because the spoon is going to become for sure usher, and if you would use the spoon again in a different pot, you would need 2 zaytim against it.
Yeah, but that's not
all he's saying is that here we don't view it in a staged way. We don't view it as step by step. We view it as a moment. It's one moment, a one zayit milk goes in, and we're not going to create 2 zaytim in that way. But that still doesn't say anything about the status of the spoon afterward.
Yeah, we're not worried about the spoon at the moment, though, right? We're worried about the kedera, right?
But there's no we're not going to start breaking up a single action into multiple actions and say, but the spoon became aser, and now it goes back again, and have this double movement.
Yeah,
we're just going to say it's one side of milk went in. How it got there? The agent of bringing it to us was the spoon, but we're not going to, remake the spoon aser, and then. But that's nobody's talking about that.
Let me back up and try and summarize all this if that works for everybody here, because I think that's a lot, right? So the way the Torah puts it, let's go with the Rashba here, right? The way the Rashba puts it, if it's a new spoon and that day you use it to mix some milk and then you put it in a meat pot, all right? We only worry about how much milk that thing stirred in the first place, right? If it only stirred kazait, that's all we have to worry about. It doesn't matter if the spoon is 100 zaytim, right? Volume-wise, the spoon itself, it only stirred 1 zayit of milk. However, if it's an old spoon, okay, but it wasn't. Let's see if I get all these opinions right. That's and it's an old spoon, but it's not bat yoma. So it's an old, let's say, meat spoon. I haven't used it in 24 hours. I mixed some milk with it that day, and then I put it in. Yes, I think I've got the case.
You see, well, I just want to say it's confusing because there's 2 types of old spoons.
Yeah, there are. There's the meat spoon and the milk spoon.
We're actually talking at cross purposes a little bit. The different Rishonim are viewing it differently. There's one old spoon, it's got lots of milk in it.
And one that has lots
that is a davar pashut that we go by the whole thing. So there's a different old spoon, which has got lots of meat in it. And then 1 zayit. And on that, the Ramban comes along. There's two different old spoons.
Before there's the Rashba says it's the same case if I have an old, here we go, an old milk spoon. I'm going to get this right here. We have an old milk spoon, and that day you do 1 kazayit of milk with it, and then you stick it in a meat pot. Just like the new spoon, you don't have to worry about that 1 kazayit of milk, right? However, according to the Rashba, if it's an old meat spoon and I used it to mix it with milk of that day, right, then it has a basar bechalav character to it, even though the basar was old, right? Even though it's tam pagum essentially.
No, it's not tam pagum. Who says tam pagum? It's not tam pagum. It's old in the sense, but it's bat yomo. It's old. Old is like a secret code word to mean unknown amount of meat in it. Doesn't come to tell us that it's tam lifgam. Old just means to say it's unknown amount, and then he says bat yomo. It's fresh.
So you use it for meat and milk. You're clear. That seems pshita though. At that point, I'm not sure that. All right, I'm going to go with that for the moment, but I have to think about this a little bit. So it's because you are much more knowledgeable than I am. So, and the Ramban says it only matters, right? If it's old or new, about only what it absorbed that day, and that's it. That's all you have to care about. So,
it's only what it absorbed of the chalav that day.
I assume that if it absorbed meat that day too, you have to according to the
Ramban. That's exactly the point.
So
if it absorbed meat that day and then milk that day, and then you stirred it in meat, you ignore the meat.
You ignore the meat. You only you're right, because you don't say the two of them combined. Okay, yeah. So yes, okay, I'm good with that. So Rav Lannis looks like he's exasperated with me at this point. So it's
no, it's okay. But I hate to go there, but if you use the spoon in meat several times on one day before milk, makes it yashan. It's an old spoon.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an old spoon. Today's Monday. It doesn't have to be an old spoon from Sunday. It could be an old spoon on Monday itself. It's had a number of experiences of being in meat. Now, once we have that, we don't know how much is in there because it's an old spoon. And the reason for saying is on the same day to prevent you from going into Tom Pogum and all the rest. We don't want you to talk about that because we want to talk about the fact that the meat is live. The meat is live, the meat is thorough, and the quantity is unknown. Okay. So
good. I will take that. That's yes. So okay. With all that, we haven't finished because we haven't decided who the halacha goes according to, the Ramban or the Rashba. So maybe I'll finish reading this piece since
wait, before you do that.
Yes.
Let's summarize now. The Ramban says what? The Rashba says what?
Okay, good. The Rashba says, all right, so everyone agrees if it's a new spoon, or it's a spoon that is, old, but the oldness was bat yoma oldness, right? It is then
experience.
Yeah, right. It's bat yoma. The oldness was from the before the fast 24 hours. That in that case we only worry about what it absorbed that day. All right, in terms of you mixed it with milk that day and then you put it in a meat pot. You only worry about the milk that you mixed it with that day. That's all you care about. So Rav Nachum's looking at me like I'm wrong again. So
now you got it right.
Yeah.
We don't only worry about what happened. We only worry about the milk that happened that day. That's the Ramban.
No. I'm still the Rashba, right? And the Rashba says
says we worry about the meat and the milk from that day.
Well, no, but we haven't mixed it with meat and milk that day. This is the Rashba's first case, right? He says, right, this is right. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the case where it's a milk spoon.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. This is where I'm confusing myself. But if it's a milk spoon, I haven't used it in 24 hours though. That day I use it with kazayit of milk, right? And then I put it in a meat pot. I only have to worry about the kazayit of milk, right?
Exactly.
Same thing if it was never used before, right? That's obviously
right.
However, according to the Rashba, if that day I used it with meat. Let's say it's a meat spoon. All right, take this case, meat spoon. I used it with meat. I then mix a kezait of chalav with that same spoon, and then I put it in a meat pot. Right? He says I actually now have to worry. Was that Rav Nachum or something?
I didn't say
no. Okay. So once again, it's a meat spoon. I used it for meat that day. I also then used it for milk that day, and then I put it in a pot of, it doesn't matter, either way, it's problematic, right? I now assume the entire spoon is a meat milk mixture of spoon, and so the entire volume of the spoon exudes meat milk mixture, right? Basar b'chalav. The Ramban says no. He says I only have to worry if it's a meat spoon, and I only used it if I used it with meat all day. I was just mixing meat soups, and then I use it with one zait of milk, and then I put it in a pot of meat, soup. I worry about that meat soup mixing with that one kezait of milk I used that spoon with that day, and that's it. That's the only thing I have to worry about.
Perfect.
So that's all right. I finally got it. We got me through it, and it only took 10 minutes. So my apologies. I have a lot to say sorry for.
It could take. I think it could take a couple of years to get it. So you got it in 10 minutes. Pretty good.
There we go. I clearly misunderstood it the first 10 times I've read this, but it's good. So all right, with that I'll just finish it up, right? Because that was the we have the Ramban against the Rashba there. V'haran hevi gam shtei hasfarot elu. I'm the very end of the Beit Yosef here. V'nireh shehut noteh l'sfarat haRamban. So it seems like the Ran agrees with the Ramban that we only worry about that one kezayit of milk. V'Rabbeinu satam devarav kisvar rishona, and the fact that the Tur wasn't explicit makes it seem like he agrees with the Rashba. Right here, that's the way he's going to conclude. Right, in other words, because the Tur didn't make that chiluk that the Ramban makes, that you only wasn't explicit that you only worry about that last kezait of milk that it mixed with. Therefore, he must agree with the Rashba. All right,
he agrees with the Rashba that finish the sentence.
That if I used it for the spoon for meat and milk that same day, and then I put it in a meat pot, I have to worry about the meat milk mixture, and therefore the whole spoon is a nevela. Essentially, I have to measure against the entire spoon. So, Sarah.
But it doesn't the Tur seem like if the Tur says aval kaf yeshena sheniyar ba kama pa'amim ein yodin kama ba'lavim sharina v'kula. Seems like that could be you used it multiple times in milk.
This is the whole.
Which doesn't seem like what the Rashba is saying.
But the whole problem with the Tur here is Satam Devarav is really, he's unclear, actually. And I think this is going to be the whole problem with the Tur here, is it's not exactly clear what case he's talking about.
Right, and it's like particularly frustrating because he specifies that it's for the opposite case, Kaf Chadasha Sheniyar ba Kezayit Chalav v'achar kach biyomo. Right, like so he has that in one place, but then he doesn't.
Yes,
it just seems like you could read the Rashba as being choleg on the Tur, as opposed to.
And so does the Darkei Moshe.
I'm gonna say good. And with that, Sarah, can you read Darkei Moshe Chet? So,
okay. ואני אומר שזה אינו נכון במה שכתב הטור, מסכים לסברה הראשונה, דהרי כתב לכמן סימן ק"ז, בהדק כדברי הרמב"ן.
Good.
Okay.
Let's explain that
right.
part.
So first, he's like, it doesn't seem correct to me that the Tur is going like the Rashba, because in another place, it seems like he seems to agree with the Ramban.
That just seems Behedja, right? It's explicit.
Right.
He's
explicitly.
Yeah.
Right. He explicitly agrees with the Ramban.
Well, argument one is from another place in your idea, which we're going to do later on this year, right? He is explicitly agrees with the Ramban. However, even here he thinks that he gives us away. Keep going.
ותודגם כאן משמע דסבירה כרמב"ן, מדכתב אבל כף ישנה דניער בו כמה פעמים, משמע שניער בו חלב כמה פעמים. Right, so that's, I guess, what I just said, right? That it must be that he when he's talking about kaf yeshena, he means a spoon that you've used to stir milk multiple times. V'lo yadinan kama bala min hachalav v'lachein mesharina bekulo. Aval I have a kaf yeshena balo mibasar v'lo ni'er bo rak kezayit chalav ein tzarich l'sha'er rak masha. Sorry. Right.
Good. That's stop there before.
Right. So because otherwise, if it had been a meat spoon, then you wouldn't ולא ניער בו רק כזית חלב, אין צריך לשער רק מה שבלע מן החלב. Right, then you wouldn't be allowed to just go against the volume of what has been absorbed. You would have to go against the whole thing.
Well, I think really what he's saying, he says that the Torah is bringing two cases. He has kaf chadasha and his kaf shana, which he says you use several times that day, meaning used for the same species, used for milk several times that day, and then you don't know how much it absorbs, right? That's what he, right? So he's only got two cases. He's not talking about the middle case where you use it for basar and chalav in the same day.
Right. I mean, he's right. Ve'ein ha'akshot l'divrei de'im kein amaynak b'tchilat b'dvarav kaf chadasha. Right. It seems like kaf chadasha and kaf yeshena should be like parallel cases.
Keep going. We can finish up the halafi mashakatav.
The halafi mashakatav kaf yeshena nami yesh lomar.
Nami. Just end with nami there.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So explain that. So, what can't we argue against the Darchei Moshe for?
Im came amaynak b'tchilat devarav kaf chadasha dehalafi mashakatav kaf yeshena nami. So, because we can't have a situation where the outcome would be the same for kaf yeshena and kaf chadasha. It must be that they're different.
Exactly. He specified at the beginning kaf chadasha, right? Why start with that case? Just say kaf yeshena, right? That you only mixed it with kazayit chalav that day, right? That would be the same rule. So don't specify kaf chadasha, right? So the fact that the Torah is specific about kaf chadasha means he must have a different set of rules about kaf yeshana going on there. All right.
Right.
So the question is, well, wait a second. Well, so then why doesn't the Torah bring the case that the Rashba brings about mixing both meat and milk with that same spoon in the same day? What about that case? So keep going.
Yesh lomar de Rabbeinu lo nakat kan rak milta de psika. So it's like he doesn't include that middle case because he's including the kind of like clear extreme cases.
Exactly. Right. It just milta psikta, right? He's the clear cases. He's got the kaf chadasha case. He's got the second case of I used the spoon a whole bunch of times that same day, right? And those are the only two cases he's bringing in our case. Why? Keep going.
Kaf chadasha kulei alma modim shelo misharina neged kulo uvechaf yeshena sheniyer bo kama pa'amim chalav kulei alma modo shemarina neged kulo aval im hu kaf yeshena velo niyer bo rak kazayit chalav mizeh lo diber kan klum ad lekaman siman kufzayin gila da'ato bazesh lefi da'at Rabbeinu kedat haran ve'aramban.
But and you. Yeah.
V'chein hu data Mordechai, k'moshe katafti le'el siman such and such. Ach sarich liyun.
And we won't look at the sarich liyun for the moment, just from a time perspective, right? So he says, I disagree with you. I think the Torah rules like the Ramban. That's the bottom line here. That he has some nice proofs, right? But this is the Darchei Moshe disagrees with the Beit Yosef about what the Torah rules. And that will make a huge difference if we're using the Torah as our basis as the final decision here. If the Torah rules according to the Rashba or the Ramban, will make a difference how we paskin. So, good. All right, we've got 10 minutes left. Let me think about how I want to do this. Let's go to the Shulchan Aruch. Any questions on that before we go to the Shulchan Aruch? All right, let's go to the Shulchan Aruch. Sadi Chet. Let's do. Well, I'll read Daled and then we'll do Hey, and we'll see how he paskins. So, all right, everyone there? All right, I'll start with Daled in the Shulchan Aruch. Isur shnit bashel im heter afilu makiro v'hu shalem uzrako tzarich shishim neged kol isur mipnei she'en anu yodim kama yetza mimenu. Right. The basic rule we've seen in the Torah, right? If you have an Isur fall into a heter, you pull out the Isur, we still don't know how much of the Isur went in, and therefore we measure against the entire volume. Lefichach hamavashel b'ktirat Isur shehi bat yoma, o tochev kaf shel Isur beheter, tzarich shishim neged keneged kol hakdera uchneged kol ma shetachav me'akaf she'en anu yadim kama bela'o. Bein shehem shel cheres or eitz or matechet, right? So if I cooking in a non-kosher vessel, or I put an unkosher spoon that was used for unkosher food in my soup, I need 60 against either the entire amount of the spoon that went into the thing or against the entire pot. All right. And it doesn't, the material is immaterial. Haga. This is the Ramah. Actually, I'm going to skip this Ramah here. It's important, but is the difference between whether it's salted versus fire and all that, which we'll see again later. So I'm going to push that off for the moment. So I'm going back to the Mechaber. Here he brings Rabbeinu Peretz in. He says there isn't a Machmir opinion that for a metal spoon we have to measure against the whole thing, even if afilu lo echnis ela mixat mishum decha mixato cham kulo. Even if I only put part of the spoon in, I assume that the entire spoon exuded as metal because the metal heats across the whole thing. Okay, we saw that all in the tour. So Haga. All right, this is the Ramah coming in. V'noagim kisvar rishona. Right, but we follow the first opinion, right? That it's the material doesn't matter. V'chol isur shemavatlim b'shishim im makiro tzarich lasiro misham. Right, and whenever we can recognize the isur, we have to get rid of it. Even if it's already batel, it's tam and shishim. What's he talking about? We saw this case. Right. So what we need to do, we put cold water in it, and it's by natural law, it's going to come up and congeal and float on top of the water. And then you can remove it. Because if you can separate it, it's as if you recognize it. And then you need to get rid of it, right? And he says, right? And we saw this also in the Ramah. If it falls into another pot, an isur, each pot it falls into, you need 60 against that thing. And ad infinitum. Aval im nafalak dera rishona shte famim, ein tzarich rak shishim achat kenegdo. Rashishim pam achat kenegdo should be more right. So, or you only need 160 against it if it falls into the same pot multiple times. All right. We saw all of that in the tour and the Darchei Moshe. Any questions on that piece in the Shulchan Aruch? Okay, my last 8 minutes, I'm going to do hey, and we'll do it well. So we'll see how it goes. Im yadua kamahu ha'isur kegon. Right. If I know how much is the isur, kegon kaf hadasha o she'eno bat yoma sheni'er bao. Right? If I know how much it absorbed of milk, and either because it was new or I haven't used it in 24 hours, and it absorbed 1 zayit of chalav, and then I put it in a meat pot, I only need to do bitul against that 1 kazait, not against the entire spoon. All right. Velo amrinan gabe chaticha naset nevila. Afilo im niarobo isur, right? And so I don't say that the kli becomes chanan, right? This is the Ramah.
That's Sarah's point. That addresses Sarah's. We don't say that the spoon became aser and then it re-asered the soup.
Right. So, but aval kaf yeshana uvat yoma umesharina bechula, right? But if it's an old spoon, I've used it multiple times, right? And within that day, then I have to measure against the whole thing. Because everything that absorbed becomes an isur, and I don't know how much it absorbed. Right? Veyesh mishomer, right? This is the opinion of the Ramban coming in here. That I only need to worry about the kazait of milk that it absorbed and not the rest of it, right? And then the Ramah comes in, and what does he say? He says, "Vasfar rishana ikar kamoshnit bar'el gabe tipat chalav shnafla kedera." This was his sarich yun that he brought after saying the Tur paskins like the Ramban, right? I need the first opinion that Hanan does apply here is the actual ikar. She'enan mechalklin ben kaf yashan lechadash rak ben klicheres l'shar kelim. Right? V'omrim debechli cheres de'ifshar le'afrid ha'isur al yedei hagala amrin ha'kli nase nevela avol lo b'shar kelim. Right? And here is the Ravad kind of coming back here. Right? This is He says, what's the distinction isn't have I used the spoon that day? Have I not used the spoon? That's irrelevant. Is the thing metal or is the thing, or not, doesn't say metal, it could be eights, right? Is the thing kli cheres or not, right? If it's kli cheres, then I have to measure against the whole thing, because I say the whole thing is isur, and so that the whole spoon that I put in there is asur. And if it's metal, then it's not the case, right? Aval lo b'shar kelim v'tov lachush lechumra, right? He says, but we should be, concerned lechumra, and therefore we should worry about whether or not it's chadash or yashan, and treat all materials the same. So, all right. So you see all the opinions kind of being shoved in here. And again, right, this language of, right, yesh tov lachush lechumra, even though the Ramah seems to like give a lot of credence to the opinion that the Ravad's opinion here, right, that the difference is between cheres and other materials. That was very quick. Aaron, I see your hand. Go for it.
When he says the chumra here, does he mean just specifically going with the Rashba's opinion, or does he mean combining the Rashba with the Ravad, such that even a chadash kli that happens to be cheres, you would also say that chanan applies? That's a great question. I assumed, and maybe I shouldn't have assumed this. Maybe someone else has looked into it. I assumed that he meant only in terms of that we worry about chadash, that a kaf yashan, even if it's made of metal, where we have to worry about chanan. But I will double check Sadi Bet. I owe you that just to make sure. So unless Rav Nachum or Rav Landis remembers, somebody said something else. Okay. Good. Any questions on that so far? We've got 3 minutes. I want to just do one more piece in the Shulchan Aruch, if that's okay. Why not do Vav? We went a little quickly there, but I think we got all the major points. I hope so. Actually, yeah. Actually, yeah. Aaron, since it applies to your question to some extent, let's go back to the Taz. It's Taz, I think it's Chet. Yeah, it's Chet in the Taz, but we're only going to look at the very bottom of it. He's starting with, like, for me, it's 3 lines up. In the middle of it, Ulafioniat dati. Aaron, you want to read that for us? Go for it. Sure. Okay, great. Okay, he does seem to combine these two chumros.
Good. Yeah. What is he? So explain what he says. Just
so on the question of something being yashan and bat yoma, we stick with the Rashba's chumra, and on the question of something being chadash and cheres, we go according to the Rabad's chumra.
Exactly.
So the Ravad, now it seems the Ravad seems to actually meant Kula, but it's now been turned into a chumrah.
But and he's also got, right, this actually showed up before where somebody, I don't remember who asked if it was chalav or chalev they were talking about, right? Has to be chalav. Why? Because, right, we'll get into the whole question about chanan b'shar isurim versus basar b'chalav, but he says, right, it's only, right, this whole question that we've had here only applies in a basar b'chalav case, right? Because lo min klal bichli shenasen nevila afilu bala isur, right? So if it's like pork that you used it in, we don't say that's the case, that the thing becomes chanan. So, all right, that's another important point. All right, with that, with my one final minute, I'll read one more piece in the Shulchan Aruch, and this is Vav, and everyone come with me here. Kachatzi zayit shel isur shniyatarev beheter tzarich shishim chatzei zayte heter levatlo. Right, this almost seems like a shita case here. Right, if I have a half a zayit of isur that falls into something, I need 60 half zaytim, 30 zaytim to be mevatelet, right? And right, the Taz, go look at the Taz Tet with us. You can see this in the Beit Yosef too. He says, Pirush afilu bi isur derabanan, right? What's the fear here? You might say, oh, chatzi zait, it's not really an isur. If it's a derabanan, then maybe I don't really need 60 against it. And so I might be very cheap with it. I might be not so concerned about it. He says, no, even for that, you need 60 against it. So 30 zaytim or 60 half zaytim against that half a zait. So,
but since they don't say 30, the 60 halves shows the exactness that we're interested in, and don't be mizalzel by saying 30.
Good point, Rafa.
Even 30s is zilzal.
So I will take that. So with that, I will close. Thank you, everybody, for being patient with me.
Thank you.
What should we be?
I will send out sources for next week, probably either tonight my time or tomorrow morning my time. I have them set up. I just need to double check them. So,
Rafael, it's your birthday today?
Yes, almost ending, but my Goyish birthday.
Your Goyish birthday. You should spend all your Goyish birthdays.
I lost connection.
So, bro, take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, Rafa. Thank you, Rafa.